I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to all our elders, past and present, and emerging leaders and elders. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands peoples.
And welcome to this podcast here for Kunjur Men's Group. We've covered many issues over our existence with the podcasting ways of social media. We'd like to also picture this in the listeners and the hearers' minds, is that these are opinions, and everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a place of reference, and that is how we operate. We are grassroots in our approach to all issues, and all issues are valuable. So let's get started here. Right here we have our guest, and his name is...
So my name is George Bell.
Yes.
I was born in Cairns. Very proud Aboriginal man. My bloodlines come through my mum.
Yes.
So my Aboriginal bloodlines from WA. My mob is located up near Wynnum, WA. And so I'm Yamaji, but I was born here on Gimwe, which is Cairns. So I'm very proud Murray as well. Love being from Cairns, and definitely the culture is rich here. The community is even better, and I'm very proud of my hometown. And I work in mental health.
Yeah. And you obviously been born here.
Yeah.
You sort of know the dynamics now of the ones you've grown up with, because being a Cairns boy, we've have come through, I can especially say through my children, I've seen how things have dramatically changed.
Yeah.
I've seen subtle change.
Yeah.
The most disturbing of these changes is exactly why we got you here, George. It's mental health. Yeah. Because this can go anywhere and everywhere. We understand what mental health is, how it makes itself manifest. Yeah. It manifests through things like bipolar, schizophrenia, got autism down here, we've got intellectual disabilities, anxiety and depression. They're just some of them. How do you view these things of mental health and the effect they have from your existence just here in Cairns?
Big question, Uncle. So, how do I view mental health? Well, I'll start way back at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was born into this world. Whether I wanted to be a part of mental illness or not, I sort of had no choice, because my mum lived with the trauma of what happened during the stolen generation. She was a mission kid, so she was removed from family, removed from country. So my grandparents, my great-grandparents all married in the mission. So there was that disconnection, dysfunction of identity loss. And then, like I said in my intro, I was born in Cairns, so my country's over in WA if it comes to my Aboriginality. So my identity was always confused, and what that impacted my mental health and my brothers and my sisters. From an early age, my siblings were diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So I'm the youngest of 3 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and 90% of my family members have a diagnosis. So I experience what the mental health, the impacts of mental illness have on a person from a young age. So I grew up visiting a lot of my family members in the mental health ward. Back then, though, there was only a few diagnoses. You could count them on one hand, like your bipolar, your schizophrenia, your psychosis, and anxiety and depression. But nowadays, because of evolution, our mind has evolved. And to this day, man still doesn't know how the brain operates. Therefore, everything around us has evolved as well. That's why we're seeing more diagnoses come out of the woodwork, so to speak. So we're seeing our autism, ASD1, ASD2, ASD.
With
There's
this
different
evolution,
evolution.
with this evolution,
Yeah, that's what it is.
the complexity comes with it,
Yeah,
and the rethinking,
yeah,
re-looking back
yeah,
at past practices.
yeah,
Now we see something in a clearer light,
yeah,
but with that we are sort of discovering extra, you could say, extra things to do with mental health.
yeah.
So the evolution is also opening up new pages, would you say?
Yeah, so evolution, man's mind wasn't ready for the how fast humanity evolved. So with nowadays technology, we're sitting around here in technology, like there's always a new device. There's always a new way of thinking, believing, acting, so forth. That puts a lot of pressure and suppression on a man's mind that creates fraction. Therefore, there's a breakdown, and that creates mental illness. Now, and then what we're seeing is that life doesn't stand still. Evolution keeps going and growing. And it's rapidly picking up at a fast pace. But if you got people that are still practicing old ways of life and not sustaining the growth, they're going to break down and fall away. This is why we're seeing numbers of mental health grow rapidly, mental illness grow rapidly, because we can't cope with the speed of evolution when it comes to humanity.
Is this a product
Um,
of colonization? Is this a product of post-trauma, past traumas? Also, is this a product of trans trauma? That's a new word too that I've
there's a
come
new one. There you go, new word.
and I define it as this trans trauma is that when you see somebody in a very dire strait, especially your mother, and you said that you identify her now.
Yeah.
Back then, when you was young, you didn't understand it. But as you got older, you started to identify, yes, my mum had a problem. She had a mental health problem, now identified as bipolar. The trans trauma is like when you pass something on that is either genetic or what you have seen in your life that affected you, such as a horrific car accident, such as the death of your loved ones. So instead of things that are from the past that was passed down genetically through our blood that we carry as post, what do you call it? That the past trauma, intergenerational trauma, there it is.
Yeah.
We've also got to deal with this trans trauma that we are passing down things that are immediate within our life, which means that we are picking up things as we go through life. And because we live in a fast-paced world, as you were saying, news such as social media is very spontaneous. It's very reactive. It's also very sudden. So when something happened over one part of Cairns, you know it directly, within that instant.
Yeah.
And that could have an effect on you.
Yeah. Well, trauma can operate on a ripple effect due intergenerational trauma. So
Yes.
it gets passed on through centuries and centuries of family lines.
Mm.
So we're a product of who we surround ourselves with and our environment. So to use my story as an example around identity, like I said, my great grandparents were removed from country and put into a mission. Then what happened to my grandparents? Exactly the same thing. Then my mum, exactly the same thing. So what was seen as our identity became dysfunctional.
Is that genetics being played out?
Well, genetics is our sort of like our body and makeup, but it's sort of like it stays within our genetics because that's our bloodline.
That's right. That's the
So
way I interpret it, because
yeah,
we hold the blood of our ancestors.
that's right.
And the way I try to piece things together to try and understand how what the past has done to affect me today,
Yep.
I'll put it down because we are of that bloodline.
Yep.
And we might not understand that there was a trauma back then, the implications of it, how it came about, what was happening at that time, but we can still feel it because sometimes we get sad.
Yeah.
For no particular reason we get sad.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our makeup is that we are disturbed. One of the prime examples, was of authority, an authoritative figure. Now we can put in the stolen generation into this yarn. We can put in policemen. We can put in governments. Whenever Aboriginal, right throughout my existence, they saw a government person or a white person in authority, there was anxiety, there was this disturbance, there was a rush of what are we going to do? When it happened to them, total submission. Not all submitted straight away, and the submission was like this. For you ones that are viewing, when our people used to get picked up for no particular reason in the 60s and the 70s, which especially in Queensland here, it was noted as the police state. And one of the things that happening in that era is that the policemen had to have a quota system. So many arrests within their shifts. And the prime targets were Aboriginal and Island people. And they filled that quota system with Aboriginal and Island people. So we see a dynamics happening here. So whenever we used to see the blue top, we used to call it blue top because back in them days they didn't have the big reflectors now that they have. They had one blue type of, how do you put it? A very bright light on top of the car, and we used to call them blue top. And the signal was somebody would always look out, and all they would do, this was in Brisbane, I'll talk about Brisbane because that's where I seen all this happen, is that there was nobody singing out police or bullyman or woology. We didn't sing out like that. All they just make is one gesture. And everybody would scatter. Authority at work. Now, that came into our existence, the way I analysed it, is because of what they done way back in ancestor time. They came in with their authority. They came in to annihilate our people because we know the massacres. They came in to disperse our people. They came in to break up our ceremonies, our language. And that's where I see this example being played out, is within the blood. So anytime we see a person of authority,
It's trauma.
it is that past trauma being played out in the present.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go into too deep in this particular comment, but I just want to, as my way of communicating in a subtle way. Are you talking about your time, or you
My time, yeah, yeah. And as an example,
as an example?
of
Yeah,
post traumatic,
but let me say this, uncle.
post trauma.
Are you talking about?
Sorry, intergenerational.
Are you talking about your time,
Yes,
or are you talking about 2022?
well, that's where trans trauma come in.
That's what I mean. Doesn't that what you're saying?
Yes,
Doesn't that sound so familiar about the modern day with our young people right now?
it's very familiar.
Very familiar,
Very
right?
familiar,
So, and
yeah.
like I said, I won't go too much on that. But
No.
what we're dealing with in the age that we're in now is a lot of that trauma is surfacing, and we're trying to manage something that happened so long ago in our society today.
Yeah.
But how do we, the question is how we go about it. I would like to divert back to how significant Indigenous culture is, because we have fundamental ways of life that can slow the pace down of evolution. And it's through our elders, it's through the next generation that's coming as well. And what you guys in terms of like are doing here at Kunjur, and especially through the Rise Up program, you're teaching them fundamental life skills of connection and family, and that actually disconnects us away from the pace of the world to reconnect with each other. And that's a great way of therapy when it comes to our mental health.
Mm.
Because I can send the message from this phone to the other side of the world, and they will get it like that.
Yes.
That's how fast the world is we live in now. So how do you counteract that? Indigenous culture, Indigenous family. Everything's pointing back to our way of life now. So the modern world that we are living is actually going to benefit our culture.
Is this slowing the pace down?
Yes,
Of the fast pace we live?
In the right way if applied. Because and in the right way if relationships are done authentically. So what I mean by that is I come here because I know I've connected with Casey and BJ, and I know them as a brother. I don't know them as an organization. I give them my time because I respect them authentically as a human, and our relationship the connection was real. And that's very precious, because it's hard to find connections that are just about the person, not about an agenda.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It sure does.
So and see, everybody's got agendas and want to work and create relationships and stuff like that. Whereas I just came because Brother Casey reached out and I said, yeah, bro, you let me know when. And so that was it. And because I value real relationship, and it's hard to find that in this age because nobody's got time. We are more connected, but we're actually more disconnected.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. So that's what I love seeing that's happening at Kunjur, because it's like you guys are winding back the clock for
Well, it's restructuring the brain to cope with today's problem, because when we talk about mental health, and then we have all these different facets, grades, levels of mental health, we've just always thrown them into one basket, that the person isn't feeling well, isn't coping well, is stressed out. But when we start to identify the different levels of mental health, we are starting to discover that they are part of an intricate system where we could connect in and start to re-educate there to help them, bring them back. Probably an example is that the young ones that we engage with because they are in a period in their life full of energy. Teenage testosterone is at play. Got to go do this, got to go do that. Peer pressure is also there. Make them stop, pull up, teach them an old. Well, we are currently making a bayan, an old loy cane hut, rainforest style, and that bayan is the history behind that one. I tell them about the structure using the things around you. You don't have to remodel creation. Creation has gave us everything that we needed. This is how Aboriginal eyes look through, look at creation. Today, creation is non-existent. It is artificial. And we got to turn their minds back to what is real and what is artificial. So by them engaging in this building a structure and telling the story behind it, giving it the name, why, the purpose, and even bringing it together with today's thinking, because the structure of that Roy Cane hut, the Europeans took that and made these little tents today it's the same structure with the rods, and you know how they overlap, and then you put the tent fly over the top, and it becomes that dome tent. Well, that came from the bayan structure of Loy Cane. They actually took that, commercialized it, and made a lot of money. But having said that, this is why we got to make them understand other things. That's why I said it's not a reprogramming of their minds. It's putting into their minds that there is reality in place of what is non-reality, and a lot of that non-reality is looking at your phone. What we see in your phone is a scenario. It can either tell you to do it. It can either tell your mind to relive it. It can either tell your mind to restructure itself to accept it. What is right in front of you is now hard to accept. So when we have the mother, when we have the father, when we have the policeman, the authority saying, you cannot do that, reality isn't accepted. It's this non-reality that is more acceptable now. And I see that as when you talk about the evolution of the mind, we can see how dramatic the mind, being as complex as it is, has the ability to change, and change very dramatic. So that's part of our Connect program, is to get their minds back into what is real, hands-on, feel, smell it, why it exists. So, and that is just a small example on what Kunjur does to try and reorganize their minds into the things that aren't on social media. They are scenarios. They are just things that play out within your mind. You can act them out if you feel free to. A lot of them do. That's why we have this big explosion of car theft, because they are acting out what they are seeing, which is a pity. But they are making something that was non-real into a reality, and it's unproductive. Where we put them into a productive state, I think that is where our value comes out. And as you were saying, with old understanding and wisdom coming to the fore, I think it's very necessary today to have that as part of the mindset. They must not miss out on it. We cannot afford that they miss out on that teaching.
Well, you know, on that, I was going to mention before that we live in a very valuable part of the country. I come from a tourism background. Um, so I got to fall in love with Cairns all over again, because growing up in housing commission, that comes with all that darkness as well. And I used to want to get out of here, like I didn't like Cairns. But luckily enough, I fell into tourism, and I realized that we are actually in a very precious location in North Queensland. I say that for many different reasons. Is one most commonly known reason is, in the whole world, we live in a place where there's two World Heritage Sites meet, the rainforest and the reef. We have the world's oldest rainforest here, living, existing here in North Queensland,
We've got the privilege of walking about in it.
Which is like 20 minutes away, and a lot of our reptile, flora and fauna species in the nation come from the rainforest, Therefore, what that means, if we lose the rainforest, we actually, a lot of our reptiles or flora and fauna species cease to exist. So saying that, I absolutely wow, Cairns is the place to be, when it comes to a location. But lastly, we are actually only in one of the only destination, and I'll be prideful here about Cairns.
Yeah.
Not only in Australia but in the world, where we're encouraged to put our phone down because of how marvelous what we're looking at is. Amazing. Like, we can go out to the reef and see all these different colors and see creation, of what God created. We can go into the rainforest. No signal there, anyways.
Yeah, that's
so
like good advantage.
Where we can actually be still in creation and feel it. So, and I'm saying all this because that is what our young people need. That is what our people that are going through mental illnesses need, is connection. One thing we really focus on at Fall Forward when it comes to mental health is connection before compliance.
Okay.
Right? What that means is, see the person before you see the problem. Because if you see the person, that allows you to build trust, relationship, and rapport. Then that is actually when people are going to listen to you in order for you to help them in their life. So the most important thing is with people in general, whether you're old or young, is you've got to actually create connection with the person.
Yes.
And living here in Cairns, connection is actually something we can do easy by leaving our house, going for a walk, going to Kunjur, reconnecting with other men. It's actually, and there's not much traffic, in bigger cities.
That's right.
It's actually easy to get to.
Yeah,
like
very close.
Very close. So if there's a place in this nation that can actually create change and make a huge impact on mental health, it's Cairns and the community. I have no doubt.
We have the resources of the environment. We have the resources of mainstay, which is family connections. They are still in existence.
Yeah.
All good food for healthy minds.
Yeah. Like I'm obsessed with trees.
Oh, right. So am I.
not like I know every tree, but when I walk into a rainforest, I see this 100-meter standing tall tree.
Me too, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Probably seen hundreds and thousands of people walk past him. He would know so much, that tree.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You personify creation because we are part of creation.
That's right.
And when you personify creation, such as a tree, and you talk to him and you put your hand on him and say, "Hey, which old man?"
That's right.
You've seen a lot of things in your days.
Right. That's right.
He's seen white fella come here. He was here when black fella got rounded up.
So, like, if I'm going to sound like a real tree lover here.
Go for it.
I would say if you just take the time to sit with your back against a tree, away from disconnecting from, life, you would actually start to see your mind replenish itself because and see, the mind is a muscle. So I'm not the brain. Sorry, the brain and the mind are two different things, Uncle. So the brain is a muscle. So therefore, the brain can develop, right? But you got to allow it to have an environment to do so. So if you take the time to take yourself away and disconnect from society, to spend that alone time and to find yourself, you actually to you'll start to create an environment where you can actually process thoughts. Your brain will start to re-energize itself. Like, oh, you know what? I'm actually doing all right. You start to breathe better. Then you start to forget about these things that are irrelevant to how you feel, that really you shouldn't even care about. Start to value what's around you. That's what Cairns has the value to do, is to take you away and connect with creation, and connect with God again, and really find yourself.
Yeah.
And I think Kunjur, I'm an advocate out there in the community.
Great, sing us up.
And really praising you guys for what you're doing, because one thing we need the most is our men to take back their position.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Our men, we're the rightful keeper of authority and dominion. We were the leaders. If we take back our office in our family, we will see change within that dynamic. We will see kids start to submit and obey because there's that male figure in the family dynamic. We will see less stress on our women. Like, our women have walked in two roles for too long, Uncle,
My word.
filling two seats.
Yeah, that's right.
It's time for our men to come back in and really take their position in the family dynamic. And my opinion, as a now married man and a passionate father, is that that is where we got to start in our men. Men's suicide, men's mental illness, men's incarceration percentages are higher than most, and Indigenous men, if even, are way higher.
We take the lead in the world. Australian Indigenous men.
That's right, and so I asked the question, why? Because we have the answer, and if the world, if someone wanted the world to suffer, we would take out the Indigenous man first, because he's got the answer.
Yes.
We're still intuitive to our connection, spiritually to God. So, and therefore, men have that ability to bring that back into the family dynamic.
And what a wonderful analysis of how things can be achieved.
Yeah.
Simply by looking back at creation, simply by looking back at our original position as men, within the family arrangement, within the community arrangement, and for younger ones, the boys I'm referring to, is that there has to be a relearning or rethink within their mindset, and this is where true men can be the advocate and the educator for those young minds.
Yeah.
Because if we do not retake back our position, well, we are just adding to the trans trauma.
Yeah.
So do we want to put more load on what our minds have absorbed now? We are talking about mental health, how an evolution has changed within our mental makeup. Now we have a choice between what is real and what is not real,
Yeah.
or what can be perceived as real.
Yeah.
So we have all these different things at play, and this is a community uh, uh, way of thinking. Everybody's involved, right down to a little 2-year-old who knows how to swipe, who knows what song he wants to listen.
Yeah.
That one there, that artificial mind is a better teacher or has more potency on teaching that child than we do.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah,
it was holding
influence,
fingers
yeah.
up. 1, 2, 3, 4. That device will not only teach them how to count, it'll teach them how to sing, it'll teach them what to say.
That's right.
Where, when are we going to take back the reins? When are we going to put our hands back on the wheel?
Yeah.
You know? Or are we trying, or are we fighting a losing battle against technology and against the system of things?
Yeah.
And also, are we losing because of the rapid change within Indigenous people? How do you see that?
Well, my advice, well, my shared perspective, and observation of what men should do is basically get a piece of paper, right, and write on that piece of paper how you see yourself as a man, and everything, verbal vomit onto it, writing it down, and hold it up and look at yourself with what you've written. Is that the man you want to be?
We've actually got a booklet that we're going to be handing out tonight.
There
You're
you
right on the
go.
money.
So
Is that the booklet is like this? It's a self-analysis.
That's right. So
and the men are going to fill that out tonight.
But you got to do it in stillness and silence.
That's right.
Because
that's right. Yes.
I didn't have a father. Like
Okay.
I had a male that gave, that helped give birth to me.
So your biological connection.
Biological, connection. He lived in our house, but he wasn't a good person.
He wasn't the dad.
So the reason why I say it like that is because he was my example.
Okay.
Right? So for me to follow in his footsteps, he was the example of what my closest example of what a man is, and it wasn't a good one, Uncle. So a lot of my belief system and conceptualizations of how a man is was wrong
from day one.
So what I had to do is actually grab that piece of paper, scrunch it up, that self-analysis, put it in the bin, and ask myself, what sort of man do I want to be? What sort of, when I'm out there in the community connecting with other men, when I walk away from them, what are some of the thoughts do I want to be remembered by? Not only that, take it closer to my heart. What does when my kids are describing a man to a person, what are they going to describe because of my influence? When I've got daughters, so when my daughters grow up, what sort of man they're going to marry? A reflection of the man who I am. So then I went on this journey of self-discovery and recreation of who I am as a man. And then I learned that I'm actually in control of that man. I don't need to allow anybody else to influence the man that I want to be. I'm in control. So whatever I want to add in or take out, that's my job. And I think what we need to learn as men is exactly that. You're in control of who you want to be and who you become as a man. So add everything you want in there. Because everything you want, you deserve. We've all deserved to live this life, in the way we desire. So don't let anything limit you from becoming that man. But also take out See, my dad, he was alcoholic,
Mm.
you know, and then he was physically abusive.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot growing up. So I removed alcohol. I don't drink. I removed, violence. I removed myself from the physical environment and into a complete different suburb, to build that belief system in my mind, because that's where it all comes back. How you
Yeah.
think it
Yep.
and how you believe it is what will become.
Yes. Yeah.
So I had to change my whole thinking. And
So it was a reconstructing, re-educating within your mindset as well.
I used to say this to my brothers.
Yeah.
I was gardening.
Weeding
out. And like for a year there, Uncle, I spent a year weeding. And also, like, I'm not a physical worker. I work with my mind. So
yes.
and so I physically got into weeding because I need an example of what I mean here as a metaphor, but I also got into my mind and see, I learned there's different type of weeds. There's weeds that start back here and go all up here.
All right.
Extend over generations.
Yeah.
So I'll pull that sucker out.
Yeah,
You don't belong there, So like the stuff that happened with my elders in the mission, I removed. I said, yeah, that may have happened to them, but I'm going to stand in the gap and break the cycle for my future generations.
Exactly, and that's usually one of the main things to do with any re-education and being reproductive in your life.
Yeah.
You've got to break that gap. You have to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And that's always seemed to be within any way how communities are operating. They always talk about breaking the cycle.
That's right.
And and that's in itself is a mental operation, because it's within yourself that you are battling, isn't it?
It is. It's the cycle is generational trauma.
Exactly.
And it's not just, it can be passed down for centuries from the beginning of time, beginning of colonization.
That's right. Yeah.
So that can be passed down. And you may not be physically confined to a mission, but in your mind, you're mentally confined to a mission.
That's right.
And my thinking was like that for a very long time. My elders were confined to a mission, right? And that belief system that was passed down. Therefore, I would only confine myself to certain ways of living. Does that make sense?
No, of course.
So
that's
like
right,
I would only.
You want to try this?
Yeah.
And you want to try that?
So
what they call getting out of your comfort zone.
That's right. Well, that's the thing. I'll just throw this out there. That's getting out of the confinement of colonization.
Yeah.
And I won't.
Yeah.
That's. It may not be worded like that. The translation has evolved to comfort zone. Yeah. But that comfort zone was formed in colonization.
Okay. Yeah.
So I had to break out of that comfort zone and really, okay, who's George? Who's this fella that I am that I have to spend every day with?
Yeah.
And so, it was a journey. It was a journey, and I guess I now I'm very passionate about mental health, and I want to re-engineer the industry.
That's a good word. That's a wonderful
and so
wonderful productive word.
What we need is, see, the mind is a sword.
Yes.
We need passionate, ambitious individuals that want to, I say this to my colleagues, I want to get to the closest to the belly of the beast so I can just take him out, because we need to change what's working, what's in play in the system is not working effectively.
Yeah.
So we need people of influence that have an Indigenous background to grow within the industry, to become that voice of influence, to get close enough to create massive change.
Well, we fell into this relaxed position because with all Aboriginal issues, there's been a lot of money thrown at it, and what has come with that is governmental, departmental process and procedure, and I just fall into that there without really getting out of that and attacking it from the grassroots, attacking it from the root cause. So what you have sort of brought out there, and I call it a real productive move, active move.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wind this up. We can go this way and that way, George.
Yeah.
We were talking about mental health. We've brought in all the different facets of what is contained within mental health. How are you treating yourself? How are you treating your loved ones? How are you are even treating strangers? These are the things that we grapple with ourselves, and we hope within your journey that you discover and use the tools that are out there that will really benefit you. I've got George Bell right here. George, last words?
Yeah, I do want a last word.
Yes.
Look, I'm so passionate about the professionalism of the mind. We need, the world's calling out for Indigenous professionals to grow in the industry, not just get in the industry to share culture. Because outside of this little circle that's called Cairns, there's a whole world. We need people that want to take it to the world and create change, that want to change the whole world of mental health, that want to be a professional. Like I say, a professional, which is my concept of becoming a voice of influence in mental health, because we own that ability to create change if we're prepared to be that voice of influence. And that's the only way change can happen. We can rely on funding as much as we want, but in the end, we are in control of our own, of our own life. So if we can grow as people of influence in the mental health industry, that's where we'll see change happen.
My name's Graham Brady. I've been talking to Yamaji man here, George Bell, on the conditions of the mind, on the conditions of our mental health. Thank you very much for listening. Initiative of Kunjur Men's Group here in Cairns.
Thanks, Uncle.
ESSO
Appreciate
YALADA.
it.